In the spring of 1940, Britain stood on the edge of destruction. The Nazi war machine was sweeping across Europe, and one by one, nations were falling. France was collapsing, Belgium was lost, and the British army was trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk. Across the Channel, the faint roar of engines and the thunder of artillery echoed like a grim warning. At that moment, Britain needed not just a leader, but a lion. And then, a voice rose above the fear. A deep, growling, unyielding voice that would come to define courage itself. It belonged to Winston Churchill. His words became the armor of a nation, his spirit the roar that held Britain together through the darkest hours of the 20th century. But behind the myth of the indomitable bulldog lay a complex man, brilliant and flawed, visionary and stubborn, hated and adored in equal measure. To understand Churchill's Britain, we must look beyond the legend, to the making of the man who would become the very heartbeat of defiance. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born in 1874 in the magnificent halls of Blenheim Palace, a monument to aristocratic pride and imperial glory. From childhood, he was restless, defiant, often distracted, but undeniably gifted. His teachers saw flashes of genius buried beneath mischief. Even then, he seemed to sense destiny waiting for him just beyond the horizon. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a brilliant yet distant politician who rarely showed affection. His mother, Jenny Jerome, an American socialite, was beautiful, glamorous, but emotionally out of reach. The boy's hunger for love became a hunger for achievement. He would later write, "I was not made for defeat." As a young officer, Churchill sought adventure wherever danger called. He charged with the cavalry in Sudan, escaped captivity in South Africa, and turned every daring moment into a story for the newspapers. His blend of courage and self-promotion made him famous long before he became powerful. When he entered Parliament, the country found him both fascinating and frustrating. He changed parties twice, earning both admirers and enemies. But one thing never changed: his conviction that he was born to lead. By the dawn of the 20th century, Churchill's voice was already echoing through the halls of Westminster. He was a man of ideas, many brilliant, some disastrous. As First Lord of the Admiralty during the First World War, he helped modernize the Royal Navy, but also championed the ill-fated Gallipoli campaign. The operation's failure cost thousands of lives and nearly destroyed his career. Public humiliation followed. He was forced from office, isolated and disgraced. But instead of retreating, Churchill turned to painting and writing. These quiet years became a time of reflection. Out of failure came wisdom, and out of solitude came patience. Then came the 1930s, a decade of denial and danger. As Europe drifted toward another great war, Churchill stood alone, warning Parliament of Hitler's growing threat. He was ignored, mocked, even ridiculed as a relic of an older age. Yet his warnings proved prophetic. When war erupted in 1939 and Neville Chamberlain's policy of appeasement collapsed, Britain turned to the one man who had refused to look away from the storm. On May 10, 1940, Churchill became Prime Minister. Britain was cornered, its allies defeated. He told the nation the brutal truth: "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." It was not comfort, it was courage. As the Blitz raged and bombs fell over London, Churchill became more than a leader. He became a symbol of survival. His gravelly voice, carried by radio waves, gave hope to millions. Each speech thundered through the air like a drumbeat of defiance. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall never surrender." Night after night, the skies burned red. Entire neighborhoods vanished in firestorms, yet the people refused to break. Churchill walked through the rubble himself, his cigar glowing faintly in the smoke. His presence told the nation, if he could stand firm, so could they. The war was not just fought on the front lines, it was fought in every heart. Civilians rationed food, worked in factories, and lived underground during air raids. Britain's women and children became warriors in their own way, holding the home front with quiet strength. Churchill's words gave their suffering meaning. And then came the Battle of Britain, the moment that would decide the fate of the world. The Luftwaffe sought to crush the Royal Air Force and pave the way for invasion. Outnumbered and exhausted, British pilots fought like lions. Churchill immortalized them with one unforgettable line: "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." That was the roar of Britain, the roar of courage itself. When victory finally arrived in 1945, Britain rejoiced. Crowds filled Trafalgar Square, waving flags and singing as Churchill appeared on the balcony, smiling beneath his famous hat and cigar. For a moment, the nation saw him not as a politician, but as a savior. Yet history is rarely kind to heroes for long. The same year he won the war, he lost the election. The British people, exhausted and ready for change, voted him out. But Churchill accepted defeat with grace, knowing that his place in history was already sealed. He returned to writing, penning massive volumes on the history of the war. His mastery of language earned him the Nobel Prize for Literature. In 1951, he returned to power for one last term as prime minister, but age and ill health had softened the roar. Still, his influence stretched far beyond his lifetime. His partnership with Roosevelt had shaped the post-war world, and his warnings of a coming Iron Curtain between East and West foresaw the Cold War. Even in his final years, he remained a voice of clarity in a divided world. History remembers Churchill as a hero, but heroes are rarely simple. His name is tied not only to triumph, but to controversy. His views on empire, his handling of colonial crises, and his stance during the Bengal famine have sparked endless debate. He could be stubborn, arrogant, and dismissive. Yet he was also a visionary, a poet, and a master of language whose words could ignite a nation's soul. He once said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." The legend of Churchill is not the story of perfection. It is the story of perseverance. A man who fell, failed, and fought again. A man whose flaws make his greatness even more real. When Winston Churchill passed away in January 1965, the world paused. Leaders wept, millions watched his funeral, and along the River Thames, cranes dipped in silent salute as his coffin passed. Britain was saying farewell not just to a man, but to an age of defiance. Even today, his words echo in the hearts of those who face impossible odds. The lion's roar still echoes through time, not in politics or war, but in the enduring spirit of a people who refused to surrender. Because Churchill's Britain was never about one man alone. It was about the strength of ordinary people who stood firm when the world fell apart. It was about faith, unity, and the unyielding belief that freedom was worth fighting for. As the echoes of history fade into silence, one truth remains: the lion roared, and Britain endured.